Well, hello, everybody. Welcome once again to this live edition of Syracuse Sports. We got the triple shot tonight. Brent Axe, Emily Leiker, Chris Carlson, fresh off another Syracuse football practice. We saw Monday, we saw Tuesday, and today on Thursday was certainly a day dominated by the defense, at least in the time that the three of us were at practice. So we're going to show you a couple of highlights from practice. We're going to hear from defensive back coach Joe Schaffer and a new addition to the secondary, but it's kind of meet the new boss, same as the old boss, Duce Chestnut, who was in front of the media today. Had some fun things to say about his return to Syracuse football. Chris, Emily, and I are going to take a look at each position group and kind of give you some lingering questions we have about one question from each position group before game week comes. We're kind of in that so close yet so far away stage of camp, guys. Like we're still, 15 days away from Ohio. It's not quite game week. It's not quite game prep. Like I couldn't tell you much about Ohio right now, to be honest with you, where if you ask me a week from now, I'll probably, know who the third and cornerback is, right? So we're kind of in the dog days of camp, just trying to get closer to game day here.
Yeah, we've reached kind of that point where I said to one of you today, I think we're past kind of looking at any one position group in particular. Like we've looked at all the position groups individually, and now it's starting to be like, okay, I'd like to see everyone moving together as one. And we did get a little bit of 11 on 11 today, but it's never quite as much as I think we'd all hope for.
Yeah, we're going to show some highlights from that. It was all highlights for the defense. And, Chris, when we're in this part of camp, and I'd like to fully stress the word almost, it almost makes me pine for preseason games in college football, right? 'Cause you just want to break it up a little bit. You just want to see another team over there because we've heard so much about certain players who are dominating, and these guys are sick of each other by now. It's like, just throw somebody else out there. Just give us a little barometer of what's going on.
Yeah, the hard part with the preseason, right, is always, the defense won today. Is that because the defense is great, or is it because the offense is iffy? And who knows?
And they've seen so much of each other, right?
Yeah, so it'll be nice. It'll be nice when we have an outside standard and a bar to sort of measure them against.
For sure. A couple of notes before we get into the proceedings from today. Players that were off to the side on the bikes, meaning that they're not participating in practice. Justice Ross Simmons, who we thought would be back this week, maybe still could be back this week, but as of today was not back at practice. Jalen Hornsby, offensive lineman, Lysander Malello, Marcus Washington Jr. out of the secondary, and we saw David Wollabaugh over on the bike today as well. Not a huge surprise considering, of course, he missed spring, recovering from that injury and the surgery he had on his leg. I mean, Emily, they're being careful with him as it is. Maybe just an off day for him, a take it easy day for him. He's an important, depth piece on what I think at this point would be the second team offensive line, because we've seen what the first team offensive line looks like at this point. So not a surprise to see him over there, but certainly a development worth watching to see how his progression goes as he tries to get his feet back under him here.
Yeah, we were told before camp started that he was going to be on a rep count. So I don't know if that's a day-to-day rep count or a weekly rep count. Certainly he's been out there. We haven't seen him with the first or second team yet, but he's been going through drills and stuff. So that could have just been like a veteran recovery day, kind of like they do with the NFL, where they'll give certain guys off and just a day off to the side or something else. But like I said the other day, the bikes don't tend to be major issues usually. And so I don't sweat those too much until we see guys start to get consistent on them.
And Dan Villari today, once again, in the black jersey. That means no contact, but he was a full participant in practice, and we've been assured at this point not a serious thing for him. And if he's practicing, certainly it's not a serious issue. We had scouts from the Philadelphia Eagles and Denver Broncos present today. I saw the Eagles scout having a long conversation with Fran Brown and Elijah Robinson after practice, so they're coming through. An interesting note on Twitter put out there by Cuse Football itself that a freshman running back, Malachi James, was clocked at 23.6 miles per hour recently at practice. Chris, that's Tyreek Hill speed. That's really fast. Now, I don't know the context of the drill. I don't know how they clocked that thing, but that's still really freaking fast for a running back. So we might have to keep a closer eye on young Mr. James going forward here.
Yeah, I think we all knew he was really fast. I mean, he's the 100-meter record holder in New Jersey. So like we knew he was a fast like high schooler, which means he's going to be a fast college football player. But I did not realize how sort of small the margin was to like that NFL level speed, and sort of how close he is to like a fast NFL guy or like the fastest NFL guy, right? I was a little surprised and extremely impressed that like that margin is that small.
Continuing theme here before we show you a couple highlights from practice today. This was unsolicited, by the way. I've been asking some coaches and players about Zeed Haynes and how he's supposedly just impossible to stop at practice today. I want you to listen to this clip. This is Syracuse linebacker Derek McDonald, who unsolicited told me how much of a headache Zeed has been.
I mean, I think we came out strong today. We had good energy. We just have to work on sustaining that throughout practice. I think it's hard to bottle up Kyle and Yazid and all them for an entire practice, an entire game. So we have to work on sustaining that, because sometimes when we get tired is when we start to fall off a little bit. But
we've heard a few people say Zeed's name. Feels like he's having a big time camp. Is he the guy that's giving you the most headaches out there, it would seem?
I mean, not for me because I don't have to guard him. But I would say for the DBs that he's a tough one to guard. He's so explosive, and Kyle and him have a great connection already. They really can connect on the deep ball. So that's something that we've been working on and trying to stop him. I'm not sure we're going to see many receivers quite like it.
So I did follow up with a question after he brought it up, but we keep hearing this from the defensive guys. And it's not just that they talk about him that way. Like when I asked Joe Schaffer and I asked Duce Chestnut about him today, they all do the same thing. It's kind of like, oh, man. Like they get this look on their face like that guy. Like they're happy he's on their team, but having to deal with him right now in practice is not fun for them.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard about it everywhere. And I mean, if you want to take like data that's not just anecdotal, like EA Sports looks at actual numbers and speed and like the types of like stats that lead to Syracuse getting to post something about like, 23.6 miles per hour. Like EA Sports gets all those numbers, and that's why they give Haynes such a high rating and such a high speed thing. So no surprise to hear that from Derek.
So speaking of that video game, and shout out to our Syracuse Sports Insiders who always bring great questions and comments that they want us to present to the players and coaches. One, and I forget who the insider was, forgive me, who sent me this note, but shout out to them, who said they won the Heisman Trophy. I want you guys to guess, okay? A Syracuse player won the Heisman Trophy. Okay, who is the player that they won the Heisman Trophy with? And I will add to this. If either one of you guess it, beverage on me of your choice.
I feel like I've seen I see a lot of these posts, and I did see a lot because I solicited a little on the text line last week. I feel like I saw someone say they won the Heisman with King Joseph Edwards.
Oh, you nailed it.
Yeah, okay.
You nailed it.
That might have been cheating a little bit, because I do think I saw that either in the text line and maybe someone just said it again to you, or I saw it on Twitter.
And you saw me talking to him today, so I kind of gave it away that. But he got trust me, he got a big kick out of that. It's funny because he started to answer the question in the sense of, well, that's a tall, and I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, that's going to be hard for me to win the Heisman, but maybe in a few years. I'm like, no, I mean in the video game. I appreciate the confidence from the young man, so that was fun for sure to see that. Okay, guys, King Joseph Edwards defense, I mean, they dominated. When we were at practice today, they went right into 11-on-11s, and it was not a good day for the offense. And just don't take my word for it here. Let's watch a couple of things from today's practice. Here's one play where Kyle McCord gets flushed out of the pocket, and I think you'll enjoy my bad cinematography at the end, trying to avoid the throwaway pass from Kyle McCord from hitting me in the face. That loud scream from the defense at the end, that was that whole time in all the drills that we saw. Run play stuffed. Here's a pass, and I thought it was interesting because here's Braden Davis converted over to wide receiver. This play didn't work. Let's take a look. So pass down the sideline, incomplete, not there. I mean, no matter what the offense tried, it just was not working. And Chris, like you said, that could just be these guys are used to each other. They know their tendencies now, but we've also seen the offense have good days in these 11-on-11s and move the ball and McCord connect with OG and McCord connect down the sideline. We've heard so much about Zede Haynes giving him trouble, but today the defense ruled.
I think it's easier. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with this, but I would think it would be easier for the defense to have days like these later in camp than it would be for the offense to have days where they just completely smoke the defense. Because I don't know, like I think just the farther you get into camp, like the better the defense has reads on like what every offensive player's tick is and what plays they're going to go to most often and who McCord is going to target most often, right? Whereas like I don't know, that's just my gut feeling, and I feel like what we consistently see is that defense ends up being a little tighter, a little better towards the end of camp than the offense does.
Chris, what do you think of that?
I think that's probably true. I also think it probably like depends on the day in terms of like, does the offense get to try something new today that the defense hasn't seen before, or are they doing the stuff that the defense has seen all camp? So I think it probably depends a little bit on like whatever the coaches have cooked up for either sort of side of the ball, probably dictates a lot of things.
Chris, you had a chance to write a great story that people should check out on syracuse.com about a Big Spoon, Demetrius Weatherspoon, right? And he steps in, he wants to be the left tackle. Fran Brown says, okay, you got to do a few things, including for a guy who's, 6'7", 330 pounds, he wanted him to lose 30 pounds before he took the position. Normally, you'd want your left tackle as big as could be, right? But he wanted him to have a little more mobility and quickness on his feet. So this defense that dominated today, I want to talk about the defensive position a little bit here. I had spent pretty much all practice watching that defensive front. But what Big Spoon and Savion Washington and some of these new offensive linemen are going up against, what were your big takeaways from kind of reporting out that story, talking to Big Spoon and some of his teammates?
Yeah, I mean, I just what the offensive line is going to look like, right? I think that was like a big question. It was a big question all off season, and even at the start of training camp, which I didn't get to see, but I think Emily told me Savion Washington played some left tackle, so there's been at least some sort of shifting around there. But the last 3 times we've been out to practices, the 4 times now, that same 5 offensive linemen have been out there with the starters. So it looks like we're settled in terms of how that's going to look, and it looks like Weatherspoon's going to get that vaunted left tackle spot where he's protecting the blind side, and he more than probably anybody else. I know it's a group effort, but he's the one who's got to make sure that Kyle isn't getting hit from behind by a defender that he can't pick up. So, Fran said that even though he played at Howard, it's a fairly low level FCS league that he played in. So it's a big jump in competition, but Fran said sort of his footwork jumped out even there, and he was playing out of shape. So he had faith that once they got him in shape, he'd look even better. So that's the hope. He's impressed so far, but it is a big jump. Once we hit real games for him.
That's going up against that offensive line. I spent a lot of time watching Nick Williams and Elijah Robinson today coach their defensive line and the defensive ends. And man, Nick Williams is just, that man requires no coffee, no Red Bull. He is just energy and a presence and a booming voice. And I'm going to play a clip for you here. Even if you're only listening to this on the audio side of the podcast, you're going to hear Nick Williams. And I thought this was just a fun thing to watch. He was grading these players. So it's kind of a 2-man drill. They're kind of running through their sets, and he's grading them immediately on this drill itself. Let's take a listen to that.
B-minus on the get off. B-minus. Nice. A+ on the move. Good. B+. Good. I'll take it. B+. Good. That's A. That's an A. I like how y'all finish. Good. A+.
A plus, B minus. I like how you finish. I mean, just immediately giving these guys feedback. And Nick is one thing I've really noticed at camp, which we didn't under the Dino Babers administration. There's more swearing. I mean, football coaches, this just in, have some colorful language sometimes, but Dino didn't cuss. So, Nick, Fran, all these guys, I mean, they are dropping F-bombs, but in a direct, like, motivational kind of way. I left it out of that clip, even though we're on the internet here and we're all adults here, but it's hard to catch a clip of those guys not saying those words because they're very energetic and very forceful. But, man, Nick Williams is – you want to wake up. Just saddle up to that guy for a minute and you'll be fired up for the day.
Yeah, he's very energetic. I kind of forgot that Dino was a no swear guy because I just feel like these past 3 weeks I've grown so used to, again, just hearing expletives all across camp. But again, not in like a demeaning way. Like it's usually pretty motivational and just kind of like a general, like, let's keep the energy up.
Yes.
Type of
for
commentary.
Sure.
No, like I don't think we've seen yet like what I would consider like a kid getting like cussed out, right? Like, where it felt, and football coaches do that, right? If they see a player being lazy or whatever, like that's like acceptable. But like I don't think we've seen that. At least I haven't, from any of the coaches either.
It is very motivational. I mean, I'll edit myself here, but it's typically something like, come on, you got to effing finish that. Or that was an effing great play. Something like that. It's not, in a derogatory way. And, adults say naughty words sometimes. But there have been times where like a stand-up comedian would probably blush. But the emotion and the passion and the energy that you see at practice. Shout out to Jim, by the way, who is a Syracuse Sports podcast viewer who got to go to practice today. He said hello, and he got to experience it for himself. So guys like Jim and people that get to visit practice, that's what they tell me. And Emily, I'm sure they tell you the same thing, and Chris as well. Like when they get a chance to experience it, they walk away like, wow, like those practices are intense. There's no walking, there's energy. And I guess a lot of football teams do that, but there's just something about the pace that this team goes that people are impressed with. Okay. Wanted to get to this. Emily had a great idea here since we're in the dog days and not quite at game week, but still some things this team's got to round off before they can focus on an opponent. So thought we would go through the position groups here and just maybe look at one lingering question from each, and we'll see what the three of us think, if we agree on it or just what comes out of it. So I'll start right at a group that I've had concerns about, and that's the quarterbacks. And I still have concerns about. I don't think somebody has grabbed that job. If I had to name the backup today, I'd probably give it to Michael Johnson Jr., just because he's got a little escapability. He's played the position, and I think that he can make some things happen if he's got to get out there. It's not that Carlos is that far behind, and, Jakari Williams is a freshman. The offense got dominated today, so I don't think I learned anything about any of those guys today. Still some edges to round off there, but Emily, I'll turn to you. I mean, what's your big question in that group? Is it just
I think we could have all said that in unison. It's the backup quarterbacks. I tend to agree, right? I mean, I wrote the piece about it. Like, I think Michael Johnson Jr. is in the lead right now. I think even if we were to see like an or situation on the depth chart, which I think is likely, I think it would be his name first and then or Carlos Del Rio Wilson. One thing I'll say we did see from Jakari today is he did try and air it out, and it was like a nice ball. It was just overthrown by about 5 yards to Teron Hale. So he has an arm on him. He just has those little things that he has to work on, which is what we've been told by Fran and Nunzio and everyone that works with that group.
Chris, you agree with that, or any other notes about the quarterback that we should put out there?
Yeah, no, I mean the backup spot's the obvious one. I'm gonna try to avoid backups because I think that's gonna be the answer for most position groups. But like the one thing that I don't think we've talked about is right when we had this transition from Dungy to DeVito, we all agreed that the key to Syracuse football success historically is having a running quarterback. Whether it was Don McPherson, whether it was Donovan McNabb, whether it was Eric Dungy, every great Syracuse team seems like it's led by a running quarterback. And we all sort of went along with the narrative that it's too hard for Syracuse to build a good offensive line. It's too hard for them to get every position right, which you have to do when you don't have like a running quarterback who can make plays. And this team that we all have like high expectations for is going to have to do it without that running quarterback. And I know they're encouraging Kyle to run, but he's not going to be that guy. He needs to be able to extend plays, but he's not going to like make up for deficiencies in that same type of way. So
that's a great point.
I'm curious. I'm curious about that. We've all thought that like that's the formula for Syracuse to pop big years, but like it can't be this year if they pop one.
And look, Tommy DeVito had mobility. He just had quite literally the worst offensive line in college football 2 years in a row. And that's not me just dumping on those guys. They gave up the most sacks in college football 2 years in a row. So I don't think we really got a sense of what Tommy could be. And that, vicious cycle, he gets hurt and was always recovering from injuries, and we never saw it. With McCord, he is a true pocket quarterback. He's healthy this year. So we'll see if he has some mobility, but that's not a weapon. He has 0 career rushing touchdowns. So that's just not something that's in his repertoire, if you will. But we also, I don't think, have seen an offensive line this deep at Syracuse in a while. So how does that translate to our next position at running back? And I'll start with that. I just feel like the good problem to have here is how you're going to utilize all these guys, because you got to get LeQuint his reps. My guy, Yasin Willis, I think you would be smart to get him on the field, but we've heard maybe 3 or 4 backs are trying to edge their way in there. So I guess how do you get them all the football would be a positive question to ask at this point. Emily, what do you think?
Yeah, mine's along that same line. I was going to say, like we heard from Nixon, this is going to be like a 3-4 back offense, and they're going to use all these guys. So just what does that look like, right? And how do they balance having a superstar like LeQuint, who they are hoping to help set up as a NFL draft pick next year, presumably. So how do they balance letting him have his shine and doing the great work that he's done for this team over the past year, and no doubt will do this year, while also using those other weapons to keep him healthy and give them their shine as well, and all of that.
Yeah. I feel great about the running back room, right? Like LeQuint, they've mentioned is a 3-down player. Yassine's looked great as a freshman. Will Nixon brings in experience. The only thing I could come up with was like if and knock on wood it doesn't happen, but like if LeQuint gets hurt, what it looks like, right? Like Yassine might not be ready as a freshman to take on sort of those pass blocking 3-down responsibilities. I presume Will might get the call if he's not, and that's probably fine. That's probably why they brought Will in. But like, what happens is, if LeQuint goes down, because he is such a, versatile type of player. But that's
and
a good problem to have.
Good problem. Running 23 miles per hour too. So, how do you incorporate Malachi James out there? All good problems to have. It sounds like in the running back room. Receivers, Emily, I'll turn to you first on this one. What do you think?
I guess this is maybe cheating a little bit, because it's not a question that will be answered before the first week. It's more of like a whole season long question, but I'm curious to see like the distribution. This is kind of something we've talked about, but like the distribution among the receivers between targets and between yards, like who ends up having the most targets. I would probably put my money on Gadsden or Meeks, but yards could be Haynes or like any number of some of these other younger guys that we've like been told are speed players and deep ball threats and stuff like that. So that's a little bit of a cheat, but I am curious to see how targets versus receptions shakes out. I mean, we might get a little bit of a peek in it in week 1 and just be able to kind of multiply it out over 12 weeks, but that's my question.
Mine's kind of similar in that, are they going to have enough room, for lack of a better way to phrase this, for Trevor Pena? Because you have OG, you have Villari, Meeks, Haynes, Hatcher. We've been told don't count Darrell Gill Jr. out of this mix. I mean, you got to draw the line somewhere. Pena's a great safety valve. We just brought it up with the mobility at the quarterback position, right? I just don't think Pena is that safety valve for Kyle McCord. We just haven't heard that. Maybe we just haven't asked about it. But in these natural conversations, there's certain names that come up. This is not a knock on Pena. I haven't heard that yet. And can be such a weapon when he's utilized properly and he's healthy. So maybe that's something to keep a closer eye on and ask about going forward is, hey, what about Trevor Pena? How is he kind of working his way into his offense? And maybe that's the moment where the coaches are going to be like, shh, we don't want you to ask about Trevor Pena. He's not quite a secret weapon, but somebody who may be flying under the radar more than they should. What do you think, Chris?
I think it'll be interesting how they keep Yazid Haynes explosive and healthy over the long haul, and like how many touches they can give him while balancing that. We were talking to him the other day, and there are some guys, football players, you look at them and they're like big, strong, mature looking guys at 20 or 21 years old. Yazid's got a boyish face and he's got a pretty slim figure, and if they're going to utilize him a lot, is he going to be explosive all season the way that we know he has been so far through training camp, and maintain those speed numbers? And how many touches can they get him and sort of keep him healthy? Because I do think that speed is something that he might be right. They have a very versatile wide receiver room, but his big playability seems like that is maybe unique sort of to him among that bunch.
On the offensive line, I think my concern is simple. It's reps. There are stats out there. You can find them. Chris, I think you even brought this to my attention. Transfer portal is something that can help your team. It can build up depth. It can bring in talent, as we were just talking about with Big Spoon and Savion Washington. But the best offensive lines are the ones that have been in sync and together and know each other for at the very least a year or two. They're working against the clock here. They have Dale Williams, the offensive line coach, has got to find the cheat code to get everybody on the same page as quickly as possible. There's more depth there. There's more size there. There's more talent there. But you can't rush that. That's just something that comes with time, and they don't have the time that you would want for this line to be as in sync as they can be for Kyle McCord come early in the season.
Yeah, I think mine would be, one thing we hear traditionally with O-line is that it's not a top 5, it's like a top 7, and there are 2 guys that you hope are guys that could slot in anywhere if there's an injury, if a guy needs to come out for a rep, something like that. And I looking at the second string O-line, I don't know who those 2 guys are right now that I would feel confident could slot in and have the same chemistry that I think this starting 5 is going to have, that could play at that same level. I think people would have thought it was going to be Enrique Cruz, maybe, and maybe it still is. We did see him shift inside earlier this week and play some snaps at guard, which I thought was interesting. David Wolaba is still, like I said earlier today, a little out of the picture just because he's still on a rep count and coming back. But whoever those 2 guys are that are those substitutes that come in and take reps either long-term or short-term, I think will be interesting to see.
I'm curious just how much better they're going to be. They're going to be better. They're clearly deeper. The fact that Enrique Cruz was their starting left tackle this year or last year and is now, running second string, and Dave Wolaba was a starter last year, and he looks like he's sort of a second string utility guy when he gets healthy, is certainly a sign that they've gotten better and added more talent. But the 2 tackles, it's a huge jump for Spoon from Howard to Syracuse. Savion Washington was good, or was Colorado's best offensive lineman, but that was also a line that was heavily criticized widely. So yeah, how much better is he going to be? How big an upgrade is he going to be? I think those are things sort of to be seen. I'm just curious. They could be great, but we don't know until we see it.
Flipping over to the defense, I'll start there with the defensive line because I watched it a lot today. My concern is the same with Kyle McCord at quarterback. God forbid something happens to Fidel Diggs. Who steps up and is that presence that the offensive line will want to double team, will want to gravitate to, that will lead the way for that defense? I mean, Nick Williams over and over again, guys. And it's interesting because Fidel works with King Joseph Edwards a lot. So you got a veteran player versus a freshman just finding his way. Constantly will point. Fidel's always first in the drills. I heard Nick Williams say today, that's a guy that's going to play in the league. Watch what he does. Do what he does, right? 3 or 4 times. Yes, Fidel, that's how you do it. Everybody watch him. You lose a guy like that, I don't know if they have a true number 2, a true backup quarterback in a sense, that would command that presence if for some reason he couldn't go down or couldn't get out there. Pardon me.
Mine is, can the other 3 starters on the D-line, who today seem to be Dion Wilson, Isaiah Hastings, and then Dennis Jaquez, can they play at the same level or close enough to the same level as Diggs that Diggs is not having to carry the defensive line? Because I think if you're having to rely too much on him and he is going to be the one facing those double teams and stuff, like that's like a recipe for things to go downhill quick. It's not that I don't feel like those guys maybe are in that place or could get to that place. I just like, it's one of those things that like I need to see them go up against an O-line to like really get a feel for that. And just right now, I don't know. I don't feel like we've heard like too much like specifically about like the chemistry of the D-line in the same way we do about the O-line and how they've gelled. A lot of those guys have been kind of stingy about talking about who might be on the first string and what their relationships are like. So I think, yeah, my question is just like, can those three other starters be close enough to Diggs in skill and talent level that they are truly all working together?
Chris, I'm going to take your spot here and work in a Syracuse Sports Insider because a good question from Red who says, is King Joseph the real deal, living up to that 4-star and top 25 edge rusher in the class? Well, no, because he just got here, right? And he's a freshman trying to find his way. And I think we need to emphasize, right? This is a hard position to get on the field as a freshman, even with what I said about if Fidel goes down, who commands that presence. King Joseph, I talked to him today about this. Remember, he missed a couple of days early in practice. It was a discipline thing, nothing serious, but it was basically he's getting used to college life and a schedule and a structure and what is expected of him as a college football player. And I could tell in drills today, overwhelmed would be a strong word, but you can tell he's swimming in deep waters right now. It's good that he has Fidel to kind of show him the way, and you can't find a better mentor than that, but we got to remember that these guys don't come out of the box ready to dominate. There's a lot of things they're getting used to and have to adjust to before they could dominate. So Red, I think eventually, yes, he will, but am I seeing that at practice now? No, I'm not seeing that. On to the linebackers, and we'll start with another question from our Syracuse Sports Insiders. Andrew says, how's James Hurd's development going along with the defense? Emily, what have you seen there from that linebacking group and how he may knock on the door or not?
Yeah, well, I think the best way to answer this question is we read this question before we got on, and all of us were kind of like, oh, yeah, James Hurd. Like, just to be honest, like, we haven't seen a ton of him specifically during camp. I think I've noted on here before that one of the things we've seen the linebackers do is kind of break off into two groups, and Coach Wright takes really just 4 or 5 guys, and it's usually Marlowe, Derek, your 2 starters, Anwar Sparrow, who's a returner on the depth chart, and then Zion Moultrie-Goddard, who seems like he's going to be the number 4 guy on the depth chart, and then like just someone else random in there. And it's never been heard when I'm watching. I don't know if maybe he's like one of the next on the cusp, but like the linebacking room is probably the most solid on the team. I'd say like those 4, maybe rivaling the defensive backs a little bit, though we'll have our questions about the defensive backs, but like those 4 linebackers, I feel pretty confident in. You've got 3 returners, one of whom is like one of the top returning players in the ACC. So like, I just don't know that like Hurd's going to get a huge chance this year in terms of actual playing time.
And it's a 4-2-5. Like, it's
right.
like there's only 2 of them on the field, which, I mean, only 2
well,
guys.
Chris, I want to turn to you on that because you've talked to Justin Barron a little bit and wrote a great story about him. And I'm kind of wondering about his star role. Is that kind of, he's kind of half linebacker, half secondary in that role, right?
Yeah. The idea is that he's strong enough to kind of come up and support the run while also sort of being a threat to take sort of the slot receiver. So that is sort of how he is supposed to function in this defense. So yeah, he is sort of, the third linebacker with a nod that we're in a world of pass offenses and you want to be able to, be more versatile to defend that.
When it comes to the secondary, guys, I'm going to let defensive backs coach Joe Schaffer take this one because we had a chance to talk to him today. And one small concern he has here, good problem to have in a way, because they're getting close to doing this, but he feels like they just got to finish more.
Yeah, I just told the guys, honestly, the thing I'd like to see the most of right now, we're leaving too many plays on the field. And when there's a bunch of competitive, guys in the room battling for spots right now, some do, some don't. Somebody's got to go out and make a play. You know what I mean? And And that's literally what we just talked about there, is we're just leaving too many plays on the grass right now. And some guys got to come up with those plays.
In terms of why Marcellus Barnes Jr., a freshman, just continually in a 4-2-5, so there's opportunity there with 5 of these guys on the field, but consistently works his way into that conversation of someone who's going to be on the field. Joe Schaffer said it has a lot to do with maturity.
Number one is maturity. I was probably the youngest guy in the room, but he's extremely mature. You know, he is about his business. He shows up every day like an upperclassman, takes notes, approaches every day, like I just mentioned with Devin, right? Attention to detail. I mean, he is really detailed. Him coming here as a mid-year was huge. You know, and he doesn't act like a true freshman right now, that's for sure. That's the biggest thing.
Maybe a question one of you two have, and what our listeners and viewers have, is what about Duce Chestnut? He's at safety. How's he doing? He was out a little bit at the beginning of camp, back out there now. Here's what Schaffer said about that.
He gravitates to the locker room. The locker room gravitates to him. I think he has, you know, he's very grateful right now just for the opportunity and the way kind of the last, 12 to 18 months have probably gone for him. And he's back here with a chip on his shoulder, and it shows every single day.
And one more here from Duce himself on making that switch.
I feel real comfortable. Just being able to see more at safety is kind of like my play style anyway, even though I was a corner. So it's kind of been an easy transition for me. I played safety in high school and just transition to corner. I've always been just a DB, never been a corner or a safety. So it's kind of been easy for me.
Chris, Duce does not lack for confidence at all. Talked about how he likes to be mic'd up and he's vocal, and it's almost like that LSU thing never happened. And he's just been here all along, and he's just been a leader in that room, and just got back on that bike and started pedaling.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, his freshman year, it was just like, I know I've only been here 10 more years, but he tackled so well. He tackled so well for a true freshman in college. And for a kid to come in and do that, they did have to have a high level of confidence. But it's good to hear that he hasn't let the LSU thing sort of shake him, because it certainly could. He has, before going, he started and he sort of felt nothing but success at the college level until last year. But from the sounds of it, it doesn't seem to be a lingering thing.
Emily, what is a lingering question in this deep and interesting secondary group we've been observing so far?
Yeah, I think it's really who emerges behind Duce and Cinco as their backups, because we've heard that Jaden Gould is the number 2 behind Justin Barron. Justin was saying that back in the spring, giving him a lot of praise. The cornerback room, I think we have the top 4 there pretty much locked down. But those two, we don't quite know. And Schaffer threw out a few names today. Barry Buxton, who Chris has talked to, Julio Martin. There's 1 or 2 others that he put in there. But we're still kind of waiting to see who will get the nod there come the week 1 depth chart. And I don't have a great idea just based off what we've seen in practice. That's another position, kind of like the wide receivers, where lots of guys shuffle through. You see lots of different combinations at the 1s and 2s level, just because they're trying to get guys at different reps and with different combinations. So we'll see where that goes and who ends up behind them.
And a guy people have questions about too a lot from our Syracuse Sports Insiders is Devin Grant, because he goes from safety to corner. Duce went from corner to safety. To Grant, a lot of accolades in the MAC at Buffalo with that position. He's just one of those depth guys that I think we're going to see on the field in some capacity, and somebody who he doesn't quite bubble up in the conversation of the bigger transfers, if you will, but maybe he'll have the opportunity to show why he should be in that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, he's in that group of 4 cornerbacks with Bellamy, Lewis, and Marcellus Barnes, who I would be very shocked if those were not the 4 names on the depth chart. I would put money on it right now. So he's definitely going to get playing time. We did hear a little bit about why they moved him out there. And, Schaffer did say they've moved a lot of guys in and out and had them flex around and just make sure they know all those positions so that if they need to move around, they can. But he was like, the dude's tall, he's big. And that's who you want on the outside, is you want someone who's 6'3" and has the stature that Devin Grant does. He has a pretty similar stature to Jaden Bellamy, who's likely going to be out there starting on the other side. So,
yeah, I think
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
It'll be interesting, right? To me, like, who is their lockdown corner? Like, who gets the opponent's number one? And like, doesn't matter, right? There's a depth of talent within this group that you feel pretty good about. So like, maybe just as a group, they can handle any number one receiver without needing, somebody like Isaiah Johnson last year, who was one of their highest rated defensive players. I'm curious just how that will sort of play out.
In terms of special teams, I think we got to skip that one because we haven't watched special teams. That's just not part of the open viewing of practice. I saw special teams once. I think it was the first day, and they were inside, and didn't take any concerns away from that. But look, Brady Denneberg, 40-plus yards last year. It got dicey. So what did he do to improve upon that? And Jack Stonehouse's mustache is just, Emily, you've talked about it on the pod, just looking spectacular. And I believe we're going to get a little closer view of those guys on an upcoming episode of ACC All Access. So
I think so too.
Keep an eye on that. I think we're also going to see one of the three of us on the screen upcoming in an episode of ACC All Access. I won't give away who.
That as well.
I'm not even being paid by the ACC to tease the show, but watch it on Monday so you see who it is. A couple of shameless plugs before we exit stage left here. Emily Leiker is going to write a newsletter for you Syracuse football fans. Sign up, and it'll be delivered to your inbox Monday mornings. And Emily put a little blurb in my newsletter, which you should also sign up for, Syracuse Orange Sports. But tell the people here, Emily, what are some of the things in the newsletter that are just that will be in the newsletter, maybe stuff we won't see on syracuse.com or even here on the pod, stuff that if I'm a newsletter person, I'm like, that's my stuff. What are we going to read about there?
Yeah, I think I would say, like, think about it a little bit as like behind the scenes or like deleted scenes from the weekend. Like it'll be things that maybe we have conversations about as we're leaving the dome that don't make it into coverage, or the play that I'm still thinking of at 4 p.m. on Sunday after doing all my work or anything like that. And then, of course, like in more controversial weeks, explanations about my AP ballot and why maybe I moved someone and didn't move someone else.
Those are
I
always fun.
People love to know that or why, depending on how the season goes, why or why not I'm ranking Syracuse. We'll see if that comes to be a discussion I have to have. And then always probably like a look ahead at the next opponent that I'm hoping will be informed, at least in part, by kind of beat writer connections that I have throughout the ACC now entering season 3 for me.
I do not miss those AP emails, so God bless you for that. That's fantastic.
It's the worst on the road. The road mornings, the Sundays coming back when the ballot is due and I have to be at the airport, those are rough.
Chris wrote a great piece about Demetrius Weatherspoon. You guys should check that out on syracuse.com. And, of course, you should become a Syracuse Sports Insider if you haven't already. This is the best time to do it. You get exclusive video, highlights, content, questions, opinions. You can send it all to us at 315-847-3895. Remember, guys, this is not a group text. This is you text me, I text you anytime, things you want to know about, that you want us to look for at practice, that you want us to ask. Today, I brought up that King Joseph Edwards Heisman Trophy thing. Somebody texted me that. I'm like, cool, I'm going to tell him that today when I see him. Your questions, comments, not just about Syracuse football, even though we're in the heart of it here, about the latest on Syracuse basketball and Syracuse sports. Become a Syracuse Sports Insider today. It's just $3.99 a month, less than $1 a week, but you could try it free for 2 weeks, which a lot of you are doing now. Got a great message today from somebody who said, hey, tried it, I'm in. I'm an insider now, and the community is growing, and we would love for you to become a part of it. 315-847-3895. That is the Syracuse Sports Insider text line. That's it for us for this edition of Syracuse Sports. Thanks to Emily Leiker, thanks to Chris Carlson, and thanks to you for checking out the show, ladies and gentlemen. We will talk to you again next week.